Hello, East Baton Rouge Parish. I am Anita Harlow, an EL District Instructional Coach. And in this presentation, I will be sharing ways to strengthen reading and writing with EL students. I will share wordplay, close reading, and juicy sentence strategies that you can incorporate into your Tier 1 curriculum to assist students in following along and comprehending the material. The ESL department strives to uphold the culture of the school system through clarity, consistency, coherence, and communication. The ESL department vision is for all English learners to achieve English proficiency and college and career readiness. The mission is for the East Baton Rouge Parish Schools English as a Second Language program. It improves the English language proficiency and academic achievement of English learners through an effective language instructional educational program, high quality professional development, parent and family engagement, and continuous program improvement. So we're going to start with wordplay. With wordplay, it allows our English learners to assess the academic language and that vocabulary in that Tier 1 complex text. It contains strategies and activities that are text-based, and they're very interactive. It allows for the teacher to have the conversations with the students about the vocabulary so they can understand the meaning of those vocabulary words and are able to comprehend and produce academic language. So, how does it work? First, you have to examine the text and select keywords that will point to the key concepts to the essential question. These words should be focused on a tiering system that will require some conversations. Second, carefully select the amount of vocabulary. We suggest 3 to 5 words per excerpt so the student is not overloaded and you have time for some interaction with the words. Third, ensure that all new vocabulary words are highlighted within the text. So this means that the teacher has to preview the text ahead of time so they can identify those words. Fourth, after selecting words, choose the best wordplay strategy for analyzing so you could actually uncover the meaning of these words. Make sure these new words are introduced before the reading of the text and you have time to interact with them. And fifth, allow students to record these newly learned vocabulary words in their writing portfolios. This allows the students to have further practice with the words, go back to the words, and use this in their writing. Some wordplay strategies to support academic vocabulary are next, but all of our strategies are based on a tiering system. Our Tier 1 words are high frequency words. These are our words that students use every day. Our Tier 2 words are the academic vocabulary words that they may encounter in their text. And Tier 3 are the content-specific words that they would only see in maybe science or math. The strategies include draw it out. This is where the student will draw a picture to illustrate a Tier 1 word using one color, then alter the drawing with a second color to illustrate a Tier 2, and then alter the drawing with a third color for a Tier 3. Act it out is where you would use gestures and facial and body movements to act out a Tier 1 word. Add to that for a Tier 2 and increase the intensity to show a Tier 3 word. For the strategy, stretch it out. This is where the student may see a Tier 2 word, that academic word in their text, and they have to come up with a Tier 1 word to help them understand the tier 2 word and maybe even go higher to a tier 3 word. For grow it out, this is a strategy mostly used with the lower grades where you're doing families because you're adding root words, prefix, suffix to show how the base word is in each of the words. And our last strategy is feel it out. And this is where you create a chart to show moods and tones, and it's very useful in writing. After you have chosen your words and you've done your wordplay activities, you're ready for your close reading. Close reading allows students to accomplish three major goals. It helps them to understand the text's key ideas and details. It helps students to understand how the craft and the structure of the text reinforces and supports the author's message and purpose. And it helps students to recognize how a text connects to others and how they're able to evaluate its quality or value. So the roles for close reading. The teacher, of course, used the Tier 1 curriculum where the student is expected to read more than once. The teacher should have analyzed the content in a language ahead of time, where the student is expected to persevere in reading and comprehending the challenging text. The teacher should have anticipated potential challenges that the text could present, and the student has to analyze the text for purpose and or level of meaning. Fourth, and most importantly, the teacher should have written text-dependent questions that would engage the students. And the students need to be able to use the text to answer those text-dependent questions. Fifth, the teacher should lead the students in a rich and rigorous conversation to keep them engaged text so they could get a deeper meaning. This should increase the students' comprehension of a text because they're going to do this through multiple rereadings. And six, ensure that the reading activities stay closely connected to the text. And this is so the students can actually participate in the conversations about the text. But the most important one I would like to point out is those text-dependent questions. On each rereading, you should have specific text-dependent questions for the student to be able to go back into the text to read and answer. So, for example, for a first reading, your questions are going to revolve around what it says, is exactly what that excerpt is saying. During a second read, you're going to ask questions about how it says it. How did the author organize the material? What literary devices were used and how effective were they? What was the quality of the evidence? If data was presented, how was it done? Did they have any visuals? Why did the author choose this word or that word? Was the meaning of a key term consistent or did it change across the text? You're going to ask text-dependent questions about how it says on the second reading. On a third reading, you're looking at what it means. What does this text mean? What was the author's point? And what does it have to say about me or my life or my world? So each time you look at the text and you're reading it, you're asking text-dependent questions to deepen the student's understanding. So let's look at an excerpt from 11. It reads, what they don't understand about birthdays and what they never tell you is that when you're 11, you're also 10 and 9 and 8 and 7 and 6 and 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1 And when you wake up on your 11th birthday, you expect to feel 11, but you don't. You open your eyes and everything's just like yesterday, only it's today. And you don't feel 11 at all. You feel like you're still 10, and you are underneath the year that makes you 11. Like Sundays, you might say something stupid, and that's the part of you that's still 10. Or maybe some days you might need to sit on your mama's lap because you're scared, and that's the part of you that's 5. And maybe one day when you're all grown up, maybe you will need to cry like if you're 3, and that's okay. That's what I tell mama when she's sad and needs to cry. Maybe she's feeling 3. Because the way you grow old is kind of like an onion, or like the rings inside a tree trunk, or like my little wooden dolls that fit one inside the other, each year inside the next one. That's how being 11 years old is. You don't feel 11, not right away. It takes a few days, weeks even, sometimes even months before you say 11 when they ask you. And you don't feel smart 11, not until you're almost 12. That's the way it is. Okay, after reading, here are some examples of some text dependent questions for first read. You may ask, who are they in this excerpt? Who does you refer to? Why doesn't the narrator feel like she's 11? What makes the narrator feel like she's still 10? What makes the narrator feel like she's 5? When does the narrator think that you act like you're 3? What does the narrator think being 11 is like? When does the narrator feel like she's really 11? How does the narrator feel about turning? These type of questions, students should be able to go into that excerpt and clearly answer each one of these questions after reading the excerpt. Then you move on to juicy sentences. This will allow you to explore the essential question and understand the content and concepts. This is a time where students get to actually unfold the sentence and pay special attention to the key details in the language. So, selecting juicy sentences. There are 4 things you should look for. 1, select sentences that contains layered vocabulary to make content and meaning clearer. You can select sentences that are complex that helps build comprehension. You can select sentences that include figurative language. And you can select sentences that contain content specific language. When looking at an excerpt, see if there's a sentence that the student would have difficulties with to select for them to actually break down. Okay, so the teacher prep for this. First, the teacher decides which sentence carries weight and might be difficult for the student. Think about that academic language and the functional purpose in that sentence. Examine a sentence for the author's craft, their intent and purpose. Highlight that selected compound and complex sentence that's in the text so you can clearly see it when you're reading. And most importantly, write the sentence on a sentence strip or on the interactive board, color coding those main and then dependent clauses and phrases. Again, the most important part is writing it down. So after you finish your close read, and you're going to go back to the juicy sentence inside that excerpt. You're going to ask questions about that sentence. Questions about who or what is it all about? What does it say about the who or the what? What part does it play? What question does it answer? This is the time for the students to actually deconstruct the sentence, talking about each part of it and how it connects by reconstructing that sentence and mapping it back to the essential questions. So here's a sentence pulled from the excerpt 11. It reads, because the way old is kind of like an onion, or like the rings inside a tree trunk, or like my little wooden dolls that fit one inside the other, each inside the next one. So a conversation about this sentence may look like this. Because the way you grow old, you may want to discuss that it starts off with the purpose of the phrase, that it begins with a capital letter because it's the beginning of the sentence, and it's referring to how a person grows. The next part is kind of like an onion. You want to lead the discussion to show that this is figurative language. You may want to point out the preposition like and how this is making a comparison and how this part connects to the first part. The next part are like the rings inside a tree trunk. Again, we see our figurative language. We could talk about conjunctions, nouns, prepositions, and how it is also a comparison. So now we see two comparisons of how you grow old. The next part of the sentence are like my little wooden dolls that fit one inside the other. Again, we see our figurative language. We see a conjunction, our preposition. We see adjectives. We see this is also making a comparison. Now we can see the author may have given us 3 examples of how you grow old using figurative language. And the last part of the sentence, each year inside the next one. Again, we could talk about the figurative language. We could talk about how this is the end of the sentence and it has a period. And we could talk about the metaphor. We could talk about reconstructing the sentence, how each part connects to the next part. Okay, now we have some videos showing some of our students right here in East Baton Rouge Parish practicing the wordplay and juicy sentences. Let's take a look.
So, we put Mary, and we did a lunch table did this, and they said Mary means happy and good. So, um, so now she's gonna read this, and she's just gonna read it. Read the text to us. It is late afternoon, and I am sitting on my front porch while the crickets make their merry music. And down here says, what does the word merry mean? And we got it right here. It means happy and good.
Okay, that was showing the wordplay where the student had the word Mary in their text and they broke it down to say happy as their tier 2 word and good as their tier 1 word. This allows the students to increase their vocabulary and understand the text and the vocabulary within the text. Okay, here's one on juicy sentences.
Here we go.
So, this is a juicy sentence of Brian's table, and he said he wanted to cut it here from the article. The is the article, so we can't put the by Taylor because the is the article, and he separated it. He wanted to put and his needle together, and then saw fabric. He put them together because that's what they're doing. They're using they sew to fabric together. He put together by itself because they that's what they're doing. They're putting the sew fabric together, and his, his his needle, is the thing that he is using. What's that thing called? That is called. What do we call a thing? We call What's the vocabulary word that we've been using for thing? Object. That's the object. So his his needle is the object that he is using. It's not a thing. It's an object because that's the vocabulary word, and that's what he wanted to put. And sew fabric together. He put sew fabric because that he is sewing a fabric. That's what he is doing. Together means that he is putting he is doing saw fabric together. So he is putting the saw fabric together because it may say that you're like working together because saw fabric means that you are sewing a fabric, and you're in a fabric and you're sewing a fabric. And together means you're sewing a fabric together. Yes. Good job.
Okay, those were two examples of wordplay and juicy sentence in action with our students. Oops.
So,
Here we go.
so we cut. This is a juicy sentence of Brian's table, and he said he wanted to cut it here from the article. The is the
Okay, that concludes the presentation on wordplay, close and juicy sentences. I hope you were able to gain some knowledge from this and maybe try some of these skills. We feel at the ESL department with the use of wordplay and juicy sentences over and over with the EL students that they will excel in learning the Tier 1 curriculum. If at any time you need any support, please feel free to reach out to our department. Here is our contact information. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.